When we over empathize with people, when we aren't getting our cup filled, in a sense, what we're doing is we're abandoning ourselves. And self abandonment can manifest in a variety of ways. One of those ways is how you show up for yourself in relation to other people. And when we abandon ourselves, we show ourselves that we can't trust ourselves. And when we can't trust ourselves, we continue to do things to ourselves, to others, or in relationship with others that reinforces that belief that we can't trust ourselves. We do untrustworthy things to make us validate the belief that we can't trust ourselves. So if you've seen time and again that a person is acting a certain way, showing up a certain way, behaving a certain way, and you've tried your best to accommodate, to over empathize, to change them, change yourself in the hopes that they'll change as well, you're abandoning yourself for a version of them that does not exist. And that might be rooted in potential, the idea that you can see a version of them at some point far in the distance that makes you have hope that maybe one day they'll be this person. Maybe one day they'll change if I just do enough, or if I show them something specific that they haven't seen before, or if I tell them again and again and again, maybe one day it'll finally click. But what you're hoping for, what you're abandoning yourself for by staying in this dynamic, is a version of them that does not exist right now. And whether or not it exists in the future at some point, you can't know that. You aren't psychic. You don't have the ability to tell the future in that way. So you're banking on something that might not ever happen. So when we abandon ourselves in the hopes that something could potentially happen, even though we've been given evidence that it won't, because we've seen it happen over and over again, we've seen the opposite of what we want happen over and over again, and we still decide to stay, or we still decide to engage in that dynamic the same way over and over again, you're abandoning yourself. And when you abandon yourself, you don't trust yourself anymore. And this can apply to a variety of relationships, right? It can apply to your partner, your friends, your family, even in family dynamics, right? This isn't just about romantic relationships, even though I think that's how it's mostly discussed. But even your family dynamics, right? Your parents, your siblings, whoever, you might hope that one day you'll get a certain kind of relationship with them. The relationship that you never got when you were younger, you're hoping maybe one day it'll happen. And you try your best to show them or to change yourself, to improve yourself in the hopes that they'll see it and they'll follow suit. Or one day you see a little bit of a change and you think that, oh, okay, this is it now. This is the new person that I've been wanting. And then they go back to their old ways. And you continue to try and try and try. You're showing yourself that you can't trust yourself to step away or to lean back when necessary. And that version of them that you're hoping for does not exist. And the only thing you can use as evidence or a guide for how you should show up in a relationship of any kind is what's happening right now in the present moment. And this abandoning of yourself for a version of them that doesn't exist can affect all areas of your life. It's not just about how you engage in relationships. It can affect how you see yourself in your creative hobbies, your self-worth, your, the value you hold yourself to. When you do that, when you abandon yourself, you're showing yourself that you are always rooted in a future that may or may not happen. You're kind of in this 1 foot in, 1 foot out mindset. And then you might wonder, well, why do I struggle with, making specific goals and achieving them? Why do I feel like I can never be all in with something based on what I'm seeing right now? Why do I sabotage myself when I see something happen that I never thought would happen? I think, again, from my own experience, I'm not a therapist. It's just, this is the stuff I've had to work on, and I've really had to understand for myself so that I can make change when it comes to the relationships I have in my life. When you do that, when you have this 1 foot in, 1 foot out, you sabotage yourself because you've conditioned yourself to believe subconsciously, maybe not consciously, but subconsciously, that you can never have what you actually want. Because what you actually want, the version of them that you want, is never the reality, right? It's never in the present moment. It's always in a far off, distant future. A future that is ideal, that is perfect, where they're perfect, where you're perfect, where everything functions perfectly. And of course, life is not perfect. Life will never be perfect. Relationships are always going to be, they're going to have their messiness and their chaos at times. But you can't navigate a healthy relationship if in the present moment you're not seeing a version of them that at least aligns with what you need, the needs you have. Again, it's not about finding perfection in the person. It's not about seeing small flaws or any flaws and thinking, this is wrong, I can never be with this person, or I can never have this relationship that I want. Obviously, everybody's capable of shifting and changing and growing. That's the point of relationships, right? That's what we want to cultivate in relationships. But if you're keeping relationships in your life only in the hopes that they will one day be this ideal version for you, you're already setting yourself up for failure. You are telling yourself subconsciously that you don't deserve to have what you want right now. It can never be had in the present moment, and it can never be easy or effortless, right? And of course, relationships require effort. So I don't mean that, you don't have to change, they don't have to change, you don't have to hold each other accountable or, change in relation to each other. Of course you do, right? That is the point of relationships. But what I mean is you're telling yourself that you can't have a relationship that flows, that just functions in a way that feels good right now, despite its imperfections, despite needing to change and grow together. That's what you're telling yourself. You're telling yourself that you don't deserve that right now. And again, it might not be conscious, and this might be all subconscious, but that's why it feels then that, I have to stay in this dynamic then. I have to wait for them to be better, to be perfect, to be in this, ideal state, because only then can I have it. And often what that means is you're projecting even your desire to be perfect onto another person, right? You're saying that you can only be worthy of a connection that's ideal when you're perfect. And that perfection, again, only lies in the distant future, never in the present moment. Because of course, perfection doesn't exist. So you'll never find it in the present moment because it's not meant to be here. It's not meant to be anywhere. So what you're telling yourself is that you don't deserve to have what you want, that you always have to wait for some magical moment when it does finally happen, that you can never be content right now. And to facilitate that, to reinforce that, you bring people into your life, or you allow people in, or you over empathize with people who are not quite aligned with you, because then it makes you have to always look to the future, to chase some sort of ideal, perfect relationship at some point in time that might never actually happen. Now think about how mean that is to yourself, to your inner child, who might have struggled with this when they were younger, right? They maybe never had people in their lives, caretakers, family members, who showed them that a relationship can be healthy in the present moment, who maybe always made promises that were never met. And look, I understand we want to empathize with people. Not everybody can show up exactly as we need them all the time. Of course, we all have our own struggles and issues, and life throws us curveballs that we can't avoid. But if you're never getting your needs met by a person or a relationship, and you're always having to over-empathize, over-give, and wait to get what you want, to feel okay, just to feel like you have your needs met in a relationship, to feel safe, to feel comfortable, that is not an aligned relationship for you. And the longer you stay there, or the longer you give more energy than you're receiving, because this doesn't mean you have to end any kind of relationship, right? Especially with family, because this is a bit more complicated. It doesn't mean you have to end it, cut them off, or anything like that. It just means balancing the energy you're giving, balancing the empathy you're giving, right? Of course, we want to be empathetic people, but when we over empathize, when we overgive and we neglect our own needs, we don't show that empathy to ourselves. We're telling ourselves that this dynamic, this person deserves it more than we do. So of course, then naturally you're going to still continue to give them more at the expense of your own, which then makes you feel unworthy, right? So it creates a cycle that continues on. But this version of them that you're abandoning yourself for does not exist. They are a fantasy. They're made up because they're not here in the moment. They might potentially exist. Sure, anything could happen. But if it's not happening right now, you're not feeling it, you're not seeing it, and the only thing you're clinging on to is the hope of the potential of it happening, it's important to really ask yourself why. What underlying belief is making you think that you have to experience this, that you have to stay in this and wait? What belief does this intention tie back to? Because that is what's guiding you right now. That is what's making you feel like you have to stay here or you should stay here. And then it's important to ask yourself, does this feel good? Is this kind to yourself? Like, is this the nicest thing you can be doing for yourself right now? Or is it kinder to another person? Is it kinder, more giving, more empathetic to someone else? And if it is, the question then is there a way to balance this out? Is there a way to have both of you feeling this way? And if not, if this relationship requires you to always overgive in order to sustain it, the question is, do you want to sustain it at that point? And why? Because if it requires you to overgive, to abandon yourself, why would you want to sustain it? Again, what is the belief that that's tied to? That's really important to ask yourself, because that's what's making you feel unworthy in these relationships, in these dynamics. And it's important to also ask yourself, do you feel worthy of having your needs met in a relationship? Truly, be honest with yourself too, because it's really important to be honest with ourselves. Sometimes we don't even realize that our intention is actually to go against ourselves, to battle ourselves. It might be what you were conditioned to think, what you might not recognize is an internal belief, but it's really important to see it because it's probably what's holding you back from feeling okay in your life, sabotaging you from feeling okay. So I hope this was helpful. I hope it was informative. I hope it gave you some perspective or gave you some questions to ask yourself to get a little bit more clarity about why you're doing what you're doing or why you feel comfortable in these kinds of dynamics that aren't quite aligned for you. If you want to hear more of what I say and talk about, feel free to look at my other social media accounts where I post all my other videos. I also have a Substack where I write about these things. And if you'd like to work with me one-to-one, I offer sessions over on my website where we can talk about these things, get a bit more clarity, get a bit more in depth, and just based on my own experience, of course. I'm not a therapist, like I always say. But if you just want to hear my thoughts and insights on your specific situation, you can book a session with me over there. Other than that, thank you for listening, and I'll be back again soon with another episode.